Okay. So today we will be covering exponents in number theory, uh, which basically deals with the maximum power of a prime and orders and other stuff. So first we define uh, what the order is. So suppose A is coprime to n, then the order of A modulo n is the smallest positive integer m, so that A to the m is congruent to 1 modulo n. Is this definition clear? Hello?
Yes.
Okay. And this is denoted by uh, order an as written here. Okay. So now we will prove the fundamental theorem of orders, which says that x to the n is congruent to 1 modulo small n if and only if order divides capital N. So for this, suppose that firstly, if order divides capital N, then capital N is order. Suppose order is small m, then the capital N is equal to some m into t. So x to the mt is congruent to x to the m whole to the t, which is obviously congruent to 1 modulo n. Now, suppose x to the n is congruent to 1 modulo small n and x to the m congruent to 1 modulo small n. Then consider x to the nt, nl and x to the mt. Both of these are congruent to 1 modulo n. So x to the nl minus mt is congruent to x to the nl into x inverse to the mt, which is also congruent to 1 modulo n. This is because if x to the mt is congruent to 1 modulo n, then just multiplying by x inverse to the mt, we get that 1 is congruent to x inverse to the mt modulo n. So now we get that x to the nl minus mt is congruent to 1 modulo n. So now this thing can be made equal to the GCD of m and n. This is because by the Euclidean algorithm, we can first take n and then delete m from it as many times as we can. So we get a smaller pair with the same GCD, and we can do this continuously. But m was by definition the smallest integer such that a to the m is congruent to 1 modulo n. But GCD of m and capital N is less equal m. That means equality must hold and m divides n. So we have proved this fundamental theorem of orders. So is this proof clear?
Yes.
Okay. So now we know by Fermat's little theorem that x to the p minus 1 is congruent to 1 modulo p. So this means that order divides p minus 1. So now we will try some exercises. So try proving that n divides phi of a to the n minus 1. So I'll give you about 1 or 2 minutes to try.
So that order divides p minus 1 is for a prime, right?
Yes, this is for a prime p.
And order is for like any natural, right?
Yes, no.
Like any
So
entity.
order is defined for order a comma n is defined for any n where a has to be co-prime to n.
Yeah, like in prime, so every integer is co-prime, right? Like less than p.
Yes, yes, that's right. So try proving this.
Yeah, so like if we assume order of a mod n, like let's say x then then that means x divides n.
Yes.
So n can be written like x m.
Yes, so the idea is right that we basically see that we already have proved order of a n divides capital N. So what if we make uh, this capital N equal to this and this to be equal to this? So we can do that by considering order of n a to the n minus 1. So this is exactly equal to n. This is because a to the n congruent to 1 modulo a to the n
Yeah, yeah,
minus
we
1.
can also do like this.
Yes.
Yeah, this
And
just finishes.
also n is the smallest integer satisfying this because all the numbers less than n will make it will make a to the m minus 1 less than a to the n minus 1. So it cannot be congruent to 0 modulo a to the n minus 1. So now after proving this, it is just the application of that theorem that n divides. Now n is equal to the order, and also we know that a to the phi of a to the n minus 1 obviously congruent to 1 modulo a to the n minus 1. Now
So I
here we have to check that a is coprime to a to the n minus 1, which is obviously true. So n divides phi of a to the n minus 1. So we have
I
proved this.
you wrote a
So
bit wrong. Like you wrote order of n mod a to the power n minus one. It should be order of a.
yes,
Right?
yes, that's a right mistake. Sorry. Okay. So is this proof clear? Like if it's not clear, like I can explain it. Okay. So now we can try the second problem, which is that if m and n are co-prime, then all the factors of m square plus n square are of the form 4k plus 1. All the odd factors, I mean. So maybe try this for about a minute. Okay.
So
So
so like we should consider mod m or n.
Well, like
no.
I don't. So in this question we need like order thing. We can directly use mod 4 and we are done, right? Like m square is congruent to 0 1 mod 4 and
Yes.
n square is congruent to 0 1 mod 4. So m
Yes.
square plus n square is congruent to 0 1 or 2 mod 4
Oh
and
yeah,
Yes.
odd
one of
numbers are 1 or 3 mod 4, so it is like 1 mod 4.
Yes, but how will you prove that every factor of m square plus n square which is odd? Like
hmm.
it can be that m square plus m square is some k into L, where k is 3 mod 4 and L is 3 mod 4. But k into L is then 1 mod 4 because 3 mod 4 into 3 mod 4 is 1 mod 4.
Okay,
So
a minute more.
here one thing that you can do is like consider any factor k and uh, suppose L and then consider mod L. But that does not work because basically because that phi of L we do not know much about this. So the idea here is consider any prime factor of m square plus n square which is odd. That is consider any odd prime. Now if we prove this for all primes that all odd primes are 1 mod 4, then all the factors should also be 1 mod 4. This is because all the factors must be a multiplication of some of those primes, and 1 mod 4 into 1 mod 4 is 1 mod 4.
So we have chosen odd prime factor of that number m square
Yes.
plus n square.
So now
So yeah, so if we
after
prove that f p is of the form 4k plus 1, then all the factors would be yeah, okay.
yes. So if m square plus n square is congruent to 0 modulo some prime p which is odd, then we can write it as m square congruent to minus n square modulo p. So multiplying by n inverse whole square both sides, we get m n inverse whole square congruent to minus 1 mod p. Now we can do this because n and p are co-prime. This is because m and n were co-prime. So if m and n are co-prime, then m and m square plus n square are co-prime, and m square plus n square has a prime factor of p. So m and p are co-prime. Similarly, n and p are co-prime. Now, we know that mn minus 1 whole square is minus 1 modulo p, and we also know that the order of minus 1 is basically 2. That is because minus 1 square congruent to 1 modulo p, obviously. So from here we can say that m n inverse whole to the 4 congruent to 1 modulo p, and there is no factor of 4 which is congruent to 1 modulo p. This is because the only factors are 1 and 2, and m n inverse whole square already congruent to minus 1 modulo p. So we get that 4 is the order of this thing. And we also know that order divides p minus 1. So we get that 4 divides p minus 1. So p is congruent to 1 modulo 4. So is this proof clear?
Yeah, pretty clear. But so we get four is the order. So the how does that implies four order divides p minus one?
Okay.
Okay, was
So
Fermat's little theorem.
yes.
Okay,
So there is, so here we can say 4 is the order. So here is a general thing which can be worked in these arguments. So order of a to the t of n. So suppose we know that order of a to the n is some number m, suppose. So can you calculate the order of a to the t? So it turns out that yes, we can exactly calculate the order of a to the t. This is because order of a to the t
oh,
is
repeat the question.
basically,
What you said? We know that order of n mod a,
yes,
and what we have to calculate a to the power t.
we know order of a modulo n. We have to calculate the order of a to the t modulo n.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So
Yeah, we can do this
yes. So
because by considering like order of a to the a.
yes, you are on the right track. So basically, order of a to the t is by definition the minimum I, such that a to the t to the I is congruent to 1 modulo n. That means the order of a to the t is I, and this corresponds to a to the ti congruent to 1 modulo n. So ti is basically the minimum number which can be raised, which when raised to power of a congruent to 1 modulo n. So basically we get that ti should be divisible by the order, and I is the minimum such number such that ti is divisible by the order. So the order is suppose m, then I satisfies that m divides ti, and I is the smallest such number. So it can be easily shown that I is actually equal to m divided by GCD of t and m, which is what this says. So you can check that easily. Now we move on to the third exercise. So I won't be doing this completely, but I will give you an idea. So the rest is left as an exercise. So we have to prove that n does not divide 2 to the n minus 1 for all n bigger than 1. So again for this you can consider like 2 to the n congruent to 1 modulo n and 2 to the phi of n congruent to 1 modulo n. So order must divide both of these. But the thing is that we don't know much about phi of n. We work much better for primes. So you consider a prime of p and then write this same thing. Now there will be a particular prime for which the GCD of n and phi of p, which is p minus 1, will be 1. So then you have to work out the rest of the problem. So now the basic theory of orders is done. So now we move on to primitive roots. So we know that order of a modulo n divides phi of n. This is by Euler's theorem, because a to the phi of n congruent to 1 modulo n.
No, like you previously said that order must divide, uh, like since a to the power 5 of n is congruent to one modern, so
Yes,
anything
I,
which is congruent to
I'm just
that power
repeating
which
it.
is
That
one sub modular. Yeah, yeah.
okay. So now the numbers a for which phi of n is exactly the order are pretty good. So this is because consider the set a1 a square dot dot a to the phi of n minus 1. So if a satisfies that order of a to the n, a n is exactly equal to phi of n, then such an a is called a primitive root modulo n. Now these are special because 1 a square till a to the phi of n minus 1 are distinct. This is because if any two are congruent, then we will get a smaller power of a congruent to 1 modulo n. And also, because a is relatively coprime to n by definition, all these numbers are also relatively coprime to n. That means, now how many numbers are there? There are phi of n numbers. And how many numbers are coprime to n are there? Exactly phi of n. So that means this set is exactly equal to the set of coprime numbers with modulo n. So the set of numbers which are coprime to n and less equal n. This is exactly that set modulo n. And for a prime, because all the numbers less than p are coprime, so 1 g square g to the p minus 1, yes, this set becomes the set 1 2 till p minus 1. This is why for a primitive root for a modulo prime is called a generator. So now we will prove this, that there exists a g such that which is a primitive root modulo prime for every prime. So for p is equal to 2, you can just check this. Like 1 is a primitive root. So now we will prove for odd primes. So what do we need to show? We need to show that there exists an x such that x to the p minus 1 is congruent to 1 modulo p, and there is no smaller x, no smaller divisor of p minus 1 which satisfies x to the d congruent to 1 modulo p. Now the thing is that order of x of p is defined for every x. So basically, so the number of order are exactly equal to p minus 1. So we define this list of orders, which is basically the order of 1, which is 1, the order of 2, so on. So we have to prove that p minus 1 belongs to this list. This is the list in formal notation. So now to prove this, what can we do? either like we can find a generator for every p, but that's very hard. We need to prove an existence of the generator. So what we can do is like bound the number of times an element d appears in this list, which is the list of orders. Then p minus 1 should also appear sufficiently many number of times, because the total cardinality of this list is p minus 1. So here we also need a fact, which is that any polynomial p of x congruent to 0 modulo p has at most degree of p of x solutions in mod p. So this can be just done by induction and Euclidean division. So suppose there exists a solution A, then just divide this polynomial by x minus a, and then use the result for the resulting polynomial which has lesser degree. So we induct on the degree. So this is left as an exercise to complete. Now, when we know now we know this fact, so we have some bound on the number of solutions of x to the d congruent to 1 modulo p. Precisely, this has at most d solutions. But we want to bound the number of solutions to x to the d congruent to 1 modulo p, with d being exactly the order of x. So to do that, notice that this equation, if it is true for some x, suppose this x. Now, can you find the solutions to this equation? So one solution is x, next is x, one solution is 1, then x square. Also, if d is the order of x, so if d is the order of x, then and d belong to the number list, that means x to the d is congruent to 1 modulo p for that x, then all these are distinct, and moreover these are exactly d elements, and this equation has less equal d solutions. So this set must be exactly the solution set of x to the d congruent to 1 modulo p for a point. Okay, so now, so for what values of x will x to the d be congruent to 1 modulo p and d will be the order? So x will be among this, suppose y. So y will be among this set, and also we know that the order of x to the sum k is exactly equal to the order of x divided by GCD of this order and k, that we proved earlier here. So now there will be exactly only those k will work which have GCD 1 with the order which is d. So there are exactly phi of d, many solutions of x to the d congruent to like y to the d congruent to 1 modulo p, and d being the order of y modulo p. Is it fine up till here? Hello? Okay.
No, not at all. What happened is that I got disconnected. So can you just go over briefly?
Yes, sure. Okay. So, so you got till there exists a primitive root, right? No, I mean before that, till before that. Hello. And also, like, if you don't understand anything at some point, you can just speak up. So I'll go through this again. So what we do basically is, first we will be using this fact that a polynomial p of x congruent to 0 modulo p for at most degree of p of x many values of x modulo p. So is this clear?
What any polynomial
So
P of x?
any polynomial p of x congruent to 0
Yeah.
mod p has at most degree of p of x many solutions.
Oh, okay, okay.
So this can be
Yeah.
proved by induction. You can try it after the class.
Okay.
So now we define
I
a
guess I
list.
have proved this.
Okay, great. So now we can define a list S. Notice that S is not a set because it can contain more than one element more than one times. So it is basically the list of orders modulo P. So the motivation for doing this is that we want to show that P minus 1 is belonging to the list of orders, and we also know that the list of orders has exactly P minus 1 values. So if we bound the number of other values, so we will get P minus 1 because only D dividing P minus 1 belong to the list. Yes. So is the definition of this list clear?
Yes.
Okay. So now with this list we have defined, it has cardinality exactly P minus 1. And moreover, if suppose D belongs to that list, then there exists x to the D congruent to 1 modulo P. And the solutions to this equation are precisely 1 x, x square is equal to x to the D minus 1. And among these, which of them will satisfy that they have order exactly D? Those will satisfy with x to the k will satisfy if k and D are co-prime. So the number of such values is phi of D, like by the definition of phi of D. So there are exactly phi of D solutions to this, with D being order of x also. So basically what we have shown that if D comes in the list, if D belongs in the list, then it belongs in the list exactly phi of D times. So is this clear?
Yes.
Great. So now, so we want to show that P minus 1 belongs to this list. Now we know that the cardinality of this list is equal to P minus 1. Now we will be just using this fact that that P minus 1 is equal to summation D divides P minus 1 of phi of D. What this says is that I will prove this in just a minute, that every D has exactly these many solutions. This is because P minus 1 is equal to summation this, which is greater or equal to summation phi of D, where D belongs to the list. Notice that uh, if D belongs to the list, then it belongs exactly phi of D many times. So, which is exactly equal to P minus 1. This is because the cardinality of the list is P minus 1. So, but then this shows P minus 1 greater equal P minus 1, and so equality must hold. That means that every element D must belong to the list. And for that I am saying that D dividing P minus 1. So that means P minus 1 also belongs to the list. So we are done. We have shown that there exists not one but exactly phi of P minus 1 primitive roots. So is this clear?
Yes.
Okay. So now just to demonstrate like the power of primitive roots, so we can just prove Wilson's theorem directly. So Wilson's theorem states that p minus 1 factorial congruent to minus 1 modulo p. Now, the set p minus 1, 1, 2, 3, 3, p minus 1 is exactly the set 1 g square g to the p minus 2. And the multiplication of this set should be equal to the multiplication of this set, which will be equal to g to the power 0 plus 1 plus 2 p minus 2, which is g to the power p minus 2 p minus 1 by 2. Now to prove that this congruent to minus 1 modulo p, notice that the square of this thing is congruent to 1. This is because g to the p minus 2 p minus 1 is g to the p minus 1 to the p minus 2, and g to the p minus 1 by Fermat's little theorem is congruent to 1. So this is congruent to 1. Moreover, notice that this is not congruent to 1. This is because g is the generator or the primitive root. So g to the n is congruent to 1 modulo p only if p minus 1 divides n. And it is clear that p minus 1 does not divide this. So we have basically proved that this is congruent to minus 1 modulo p. So is this proof clear? Hello?
Yes.
Okay. So similar to this, we can basically compute any symmetric polynomial in 1, 2, 3, p minus 1. Symmetric polynomial means that it does not depend on the order of the elements. It only depends on this set. So we can compute this by, because this polynomial, if it is symmetric, then this polynomial is exactly equal to the polynomial in 1 g square, and this will end up becoming some gp, and we will note that in terms of g, right? So so now we will prove that. So now you will try the following problem. So consider the decimal representations of 1 by 7, 2 by 7 till 6 by 7. So these are just cyclic shifts of each other. So why is that true? This can also be done by primitives. So maybe try for 1 minute or 2 minutes. So you can try showing something like, so to basically formalize cyclic shifts. So note that if a1, a2 till a6 is suppose 1 by 7, then its cyclic shift would be something like a3, a4, a5, a1, a2. Also, like uh, you can say that cyclic shift you can form it by just considering that a6 bar. That means it is just extending on. So if you multiply this by 10 to the sum I, suppose, then this becomes, suppose let's 2. So this becomes a1 a2 point a3, which becomes a1 a2 point a3 a4 a5 a6 a1 a2 bar. So this is basically the cyclic shift of a1 a2 till a6. So basically the fractional part of this thing is the cyclic shift of this. So rather than proving that these and this are cyclic shifts, you can prove that the fractional part of this into 10 to the I is this. Okay. So now consider that I to the 7 is this, some point A1, A2, A3, A4, A5, A6 bar. Uh, this is like just because, so A1, A2, A3, A4, A5, A6 will then be 10 to the 6 minus 1 by 7. This is because if we suppose calculate 1 by 7, then this is some point something, point some 6 numbers bar. And then if you multiply this by 10 to the 6, then this becomes 6 numbers point that bar. And if we subtract this by 1 by 7, so this becomes 10 to the 6 minus 1 by 7. And also we know that 10 to the 6 congruent to 1 modulo 7. So this will be precisely of this form, 1 by 7 will be. And similarly for other values. So we know that 10 to the 6 minus 1 by 7 into I, these are basically the 6 numbers are these, right? So now to prove that they are cyclic shifts of each other, we do as I have said before, that rather than proving that they are cyclic shifts, we will prove that this multiplied by 10 to the sum k is the other number when we take its fractional part. So for that, notice that this is a fact that 10 is a primitive root modulo 7. That means 3 is a primitive root modulo 7. So we will show that this is equivalent to those being cyclic shifts. And this can be just computed, proved by computation. So suppose this is true, let 10 is a generator, then every I can be written as 10 to the k modulo 7. And also, if we multiply this number by 10 to the some k, suppose that it is x1, x2, x3, x4, ab. This is the original number. Then if we multiply this, uh, this is the original number. And if we multiply this by 10 to the 2, suppose, then it becomes this and 0, 0. Now, if we, yes, so if we like shift this AB to the right hand side, we would get this. But this is obviously possible because AB into 10 to the 7 is congruent, 10 to the 6 is congruent to AB modulo 7. This is because like just cancel AB and 10 to the 6 congruent to 1 modulo 7. Right. So that means these are cyclic shifts of each other, which so we have proved that I by 7 when represented in decimal form are cyclic shifts of each other. So is that proof clear? Like it is not completely formal right now, but you can just do it at home. It is an exercise. So and it's not very hard. So now we will move on to exponents of the prime, which is like the main highlight of today's lecture. So we notice that at the we consider the highest power of a prime p which divides n. That is like if p to the t divides n but p to the t plus 1 does not divide n. So then t is the maximal power of a prime p which divides n. This is denoted by Vp of n. So is that definition clear?
Yeah, very clear.
Okay. So just to check, like everybody understands this, right? V3 of 27 is 3 because it is very important that the definition like sinks in. So these two are should be obvious. Okay. Fine. So Now, two important results are these two, that VP of AB is exactly equal to VP of A plus VP of B, and VP of A plus B is equal to minimum of VP of A, comma VP of B, and VP of A or VP of A is equal to VP of B. So we will prove this. So for the first one, it is like clear that if P to the T divides double divides A and P to the L double divides B, then P to the T plus L should double divide AB. So double divides is just saying that P to the T does divide A and P to the T plus 1 does not divide A. So basically T is VP. So that means T plus L should be the power of maximum power of the prime which divides AB. Also, you can just write A as P to the alpha 1 into some number G which is co-prime to P, and B as P to the alpha 2. Then into some G2. Then because the powers add up, so does the VP. Now, the second result is also very important. It is basically saying that suppose VP of A is not equal to VP of B. That means VP of A is P to the alpha 1, A is P to the alpha 1 G1, and B is P to the alpha 2 G2. Then what will the VP of this thing be? So we have assumed that alpha 1 is not equal to alpha 2. So there will be some minimum among these two. Suppose that alpha 1. So P to the alpha 1 will just come out. So this will be equal to alpha 1 plus VP of G1 plus P to the alpha 2 minus alpha 1 G2. Uh, from get here to here, to get here from here to here, uh, we have used the first result. Like P to the alpha 1 just comes common, and then alpha 1 gets added to this. But this is just 0 because this is divisible by P and this is co-prime to P. So this whole thing is not divisible by P. So are the
How that
proofs of
alpha one comes out? How that
wait what?
alpha one comes out?
Yes. So you can
That
just
alpha
write,
one.
yes, I'm proving that. You can just write this thing as P to the alpha 1 G1 plus P to the alpha 2 minus alpha 1 G2.
Okay,
So
got
is
it.
this to this clear? And then you can use the first
Yeah,
result.
clear. Yeah, then you can just then this can just come out, and then we see that
Yes,
that is
correct.
zero. So that
Yes. So now we will prove this GCD lemma, which is also useful. That the GCD, if A and B are co-prime, then the GCD of A to the n minus B to the n and A to the m minus B to the n is equal to the A to the GCD n m minus B to the GCD of n and m. So the proof of this is just like the Euclidean division which we did in the starting. The difference is that B is not 1, and so you have to do a little more. So I'll just, uh, you can just go through the proof. Like, notice that A and B are co-prime. So A to the I minus B to the I and A are also co-prime. Then GCD of A to the n minus B to the n, comma A to the n minus B to the n is equal to this GCD. And then because B is co-prime to the this right A to the n minus B to the n, then this becomes this, right? So you can just then subtract these and factor, and this becomes that, and then you can factor out A to the n. So this becomes the GCD of A to the n into this. So then also A to the n is
yeah, we can
co-prime to,
just keep on factoring this until we get
yes.
one.
So we will get from n comma m to m comma n
Yeah,
minus n, which is
yeah, yeah.
just the Euclidean algorithm, and then you
Hmm.
can just continue to get the GCD. So you can formally prove this later. So now we will prove the main result regarding the exponent of a prime, which is called the lifting the exponent lemma, LTE. So it states that if P divides AB, this is an important condition, and P does not divide A and P does not divide B, then the Vp of A to the n minus B to the n is equal to Vp of A minus B plus Vp of n. So this can be used to like exactly compute Vp of A to the n minus B to the n if we know Vp of A minus B and if we know n. So now we will prove this. So firstly we will show that Vp of A to the P minus B to the P is equal to Vp of A minus B plus 1. For that, notice that A congruent to B modulo P to the alpha, where alpha is precisely Vp of A minus B. And so B is congruent to A plus P to the alpha T. Actually, B is equal to A plus P to the alpha T, where T is co-prime to P. We can write it in this form. This is because B minus A by P to the alpha is an integer and it is co-prime to P, and this can be exactly put equal to T. So if this is true, then we can just say that B is congruent to A to the A plus P to the alpha T modulo P to the alpha plus 2. This is because left and the right sides are equal. So we can just raise them to the power of P and then expand by binomial. So expanding right hand side, you get this. And notice that P to the alpha T whole square has the power of P as P to the 2 alpha, and also 1 comes from P choose 2, which is 2 alpha plus 1, which will obviously be greater than alpha plus 2, and similarly other terms have even higher VPs. So basically when calculating mod P to the alpha plus 2, those terms just cancel out. So we get that B to the P congruent to A to the P modulo P to the alpha plus 2. Plus P to the alpha plus 1 A to the P minus 1 into T. Now that means A to the P minus B to the P is congruent to this, but X is coprime to P. This is because X is equal to T into A to the P minus 1, and both of these terms are coprime to P. So now that means that P to the alpha plus 1 double divides A to the P minus B to the P. This is because it divides A to the P minus B to the P, and P to the alpha plus 2 does not divide this. So that just proves that Vp of A to the P minus B to the P is Vp of A minus B plus. Now just repeatedly apply this to get Vp of A to the P to the alpha minus B to the P to the alpha is Vp of A minus B plus alpha. So is this clear how we are repeatedly applying that? So uh, just do this. Vp of A to the P square minus B to the P square is Vp of A to the P whole to the P minus B to the P whole to the P, and this is equal to Vp of A to the P minus B to the P plus 1, but this is equal to Vp of A minus B plus 1, so plus 1 and plus 1 we get plus 2. And you can check, and it is very important to check P divides A minus B at every step, which is like easy, but don't forget that. So now we have proved proved the lifting the exponent lemma for n being a power of a prime. So now notice that GCD of a to the n minus b to the n. Suppose n has suppose p to the alpha double divides n. Then GCD of a to the n minus b to the n and a to the p to the alpha plus 1 minus b to the p to the alpha plus 1. The GCD of these two will be equal to a to the GCD of n and this minus b to the GCD of n and that, which is equal to a to the p to the alpha minus b to the p to the alpha. Here we have used the GCD lemma. And because the power of a prime dividing this is exactly equal to alpha, but the power of prime dividing this is equal to alpha plus 1. That means that the power of prime dividing a to the n minus 1 should also be equal to alpha, because clearly p to the alpha does divide that, because the GCD of this and this is this. And also if p to the alpha plus 1 did divide that, then the GCD would have power of the prime at least p to the alpha plus 1, which is not true. So basically we have proved, and alpha is the power of the prime p in n. So we have proved that Vp of a to the n minus b to the n is Vp of a minus b plus Vp of n. So is this proof clear? Okay. So someone has asked that why are the cyclic shifts different in length? So that is because we are not saying anything about the length of that cyclic shift. We are just saying that for an I is equal to 10 to the k, it can be for any k. So the difference in the length of the cyclic shift could be anything. It was just coincidence that it was 2 in the first case. So is that doubt clear? Hello? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. So now, is this proof clear? So basically, we are just proving this first for powers of prime. Then we are just using the GCD lemma to show that if p to the alpha some beta does divide this, then it should also divide a to the p to the alpha minus b to the p to the alpha, where p to the alpha is divides n and is the power of the prime in n. So this is because, just like, consider the GCD of p to the alpha plus 1 and n. So basically the factors in n which are coprime to p don't matter. So we have proved this. Now for n being odd, we also have this result that Vp of a to the n plus b to the n is Vp of a plus b plus Vp of n, which is also very useful. So this can be done just by using the lifting the exponent lemma and the product. So write Vp of a to the n plus b to the n as this minus this. This is because just using the product lemma. And now this is Vp of a to the 2n minus b to the 2n. So to calculate this, just write this as Vp of a to the a square whole to the n minus b square whole to the n. Then we can again apply lifting the exponent lemma, because this also satisfies the conditions that a square minus b square should be divisible by this. So this becomes Vp of a square minus b square plus Vp of n plus Vp of a to the n minus b to the n minus Vp of this. But Vp of a to the n minus b to the n is 0. that is just standard, and VP of A minus B is also 0 by the same method. So we get this. Moreover, for even n, VP of A to the n plus B to the n is equal to 0. This is because, like, we assumed, and also there is a condition in this that P should divide A plus B. So we have assumed that A is congruent to minus B modulo P. That means that A to the n should be congruent to B minus B to the n. So because n is even, so A to the n congruent to B to the n, because minus this cancels. So A to the n minus B to the n is divisible by P, and if A to the n plus B to the n is divisible by P, then just adding these we get that P divides A because P is odd. So this is a contradiction because A was co-prime to P by definition. So just a nice application of that product lemma and some double counting. So this is an exercise to prove that VP of n factorial is equal to summation VP of, like, summation n by P to the I floor, where I goes from 1 to infinity. So infinity is just there uh, to keep things simple. It is not that it's a finite sum. I mean,
Yeah, because at some point the floor will be 0 when denominator will be high.
yes. Hmm. Okay, so uh, now we will see like a nice application of VP of x plus y is equal to minimum of VP of x and VP of y, or VP of x is VP of y. So this is the IMO 2018 P5. So the problem says that suppose that there is a sequence A1, A2 to infinity, A infinity, like An for all n. Then suppose that for sufficiently large n, that means for n greater than some capital N, we have that A1 by A2 plus A2 by A3 till An by A1. This is just the cyclic sum of the consecutive divisors of A1 till An. If this belongs to integers, like if this is an integer, then we have to prove that the sequence An is eventually constant. So, in this problem, like if we just try divisibility arguments, and so we won't be able to do it because the problem is basically made for considering a prime p dividing this. So we will essentially prove that if for all primes, like we will use this result and prove that the VP of um, An becomes constant after suppose some finite thing for all primes, then An also will become constant because An is basically the product of the VPs. So you can try this for maybe like 3 to 4 minutes. So basically, first do just to simplify the statement, take the difference. So the problem converts into like An plus 1 by A1 plus An divided by An plus 1 minus An by A1. This belongs to the integers, this thing. Then you have to prove that. And this is true for all n greater equal t, suppose. And you have to prove that An is eventually constant, like An is equal to An plus 1 for all n greater equal some m. This is we have to prove. To prove. So I'll just give a hint. So apply this lemma Vp of x plus y repeatedly, like this is, you can consider this x plus y plus z. Also, uh, all these lemmas, this lemma and the product lemma, like the power of a prime is also defined for rational numbers. So, okay, I will do that here. So, Vp of some a by b is defined as Vp of a minus Vp of b, and all the things work out uh, like the sum argument. Also, you can just do the same thing, and the product also, like Vp of some rational number r1 into r2 is Vp of r1 plus Vp of r2, and this is true even for rationals. So now the idea is to repeatedly apply this in this thing, and then get some result. So maybe like try for about some minutes. So just to give an idea, we can say that Vp of x plus y plus z is actually equal to the minimum of these Vps unless some two of x comma y comma z are same, have the same Vp. So this is true, or Vp of x is equal to Vp of y, or Vp of y is Vp of z, or Vp of z is Vp of x. So for this, suppose that these three are different, then this just is true by that sum argument. In fact, like we can also say something more. So you can also remember this. This is basically the generalized version of uh, this thing. So the statement is that either like Vp of A1 is equal to Vp of A2, or Vp of minimum, or like minimum Vp of A1 comma Vp of A2 is Vp of A3, or continuing in this way, or like finally minimum of Vp of A1 comma Vp of A2 is Vp of A1 plus A2. Yes. So I'll just like prove this. So what we do is that consider this thing as y, this thing as x, and this thing as z. Then this basically becomes x plus y minus z. And don't worry about minus z, because this thing is true in rationals. Like you can just put minus z as minus or plus of minus z. So that thing is still true. Thus, sum of the Vp's. Now, notice that by repeatedly applying that 2, we can get Vp of x plus y minus z is minimum of Vp of x, Vp of y, Vp of z, or Vp of x is Vp of y, or minimum of Vp of x comma Vp of y is Vp of z. So now we propose a lemma, which is that Vp of the power of a prime in an plus 1 always lies between that of a1 and an. So proof. So now just use these case works. So if minimum of Vp of x, Vp of y, Vp of z, this is clearly greater equals 0 if that is true, and that will be true in the first case. Assume the first case, this one. So then because this belongs to Z, then if it is greater or equal 0, then all of these are greater or equal 0. So yes, we will use that VP of the sum of these is greater or equal 0, because VP of any integer belonging to the integers is greater or equal 0. So is it clear till here? Now you can just check these cases to prove this lemma. So is the lemma clear? Clear. Like you can just do the proof. It's easy. It's like the statement of this lemma clear. Okay. So now just notice that this is true for all n greater or equal some capital N. Then we also know that for a prime P that does not divide A1 or A capital N, consider such a prime P, then VP of A1 and VP of AN is just 0. So by the lemma that VP of AN plus 1 belongs to this interval of integers, so we get that because both of them are 0, so that this power belongs to 0 comma 0. That means VP of AN plus 1 is actually 0. So that means only the primes. So now after getting VP of N plus 1 is equal to 0, you can just continue. So that means VP of N is 0 for all N greater or equal N, where if P does not divide A1, AN. Now there are only finitely many primes P which do divide A1 and AN. So we just need to consider those finitely many primes. Now notice that this lemma says that the VP of AN plus 1 always gets somewhere in between, suppose VP of A1 and VP of AN, then this is N plus 1, N plus 2. So it will eventually become constant because this is a sequence of integers. So we get that VP of AN is eventually constant. This. And there are only finitely many primes to consider. So AN actually becomes eventually constant. So we have done this. So is this proof clear? So basically the main thing is this lemma, and then you can just work out. This is just an argument about the like if it continues to decrease, then it must eventually become constant. And this lemma is just a case work. So now we will come at problems. So I think we have about 20 minutes. So I think I will do some applications about lifting the exponent lemma. So this is the India TST 2019 problem 7. We will be doing problem 7. So you can see you have that handout I gave, right? So you can just see the problem statement. It is that the problem statement is prove that there do not exist natural numbers a1, a2, dot dot a8 2018 such that a to the 2018 plus a2 to the 2018 plus a3 dot dot a 2018 to the 2018 plus a1. All of these numbers are powers of prime. Now VP is especially useful when like something is a power of a prime. Then what you do is like you can compute the VP of this in some way, because we know very many lemmas about the power of a prime, and then that power of a prime should be exactly equal to some suppose P to the n. that prime is exact should be exactly equal to n. So you can just put that n is equal to that what we got here. Now, many a times bounding arguments work because if this is a power of suppose p, then we know that suppose this is x. If some expression x is power of p, then vp of x, p to the vp of x, is exactly equal to x. Now we have got vp of x, and also notice that for example, in the lifting the exponent lemma, vp of a to the n minus b to the n, which is very large, is this small number vp of a minus b plus vp of n. This is exponential and this is like logarithmic. So p to the vp of x usually is much smaller than x, which would give us directly a contradiction, unless some small cases. So generally, in these such of in such problems, either there are no solutions or very small solutions. As like even in the Indian TST 2019, it is saying to prove that there exist no solutions. So maybe like you can try this for a minute maybe. Like just to get an idea so that what I explain is clear. You don't have to like solve this in 1 minute. Okay. So basically the idea is that if suppose consider the smallest x. So firstly notice that this is just cyclic shifting. So we can assume that a1 is the least number. So is this assumption clear? Like this is just cyclic shift a1, a2, a3, a2080. There is nothing special about 1 here. So there should be some least number here. So we can consider this to be a1. Okay. So also let the smallest VP in these numbers be x. Now, since these are all powers of primes, so x should be like somewhat large and it is obviously greater than 1 because otherwise this becomes 0, 1. But these numbers are clearly greater than 1 because all of AIs are greater than 1. So all of these numbers are basically 5 to the sum n. So we get that a1 to the 2018. So we get this thing, dot dot. So you can just do a1 is congruent to minus of a 2018 to the 2018. I got this from the last thing here. And now this is congruent to minus of minus a 2017 to the 2018, 4 to the 2018. This is because a 2018 is congruent to this thing. And also these all equations are true because by definition x is the minimum VP. So we know that a1 to the 2018 plus a2 is 5 to the alpha, with alpha being greater than x by definition of x. So similarly, by just continuing this way, we get that a1 congruent to minus of a1 to the 2018 to the 2018 modulo 5 to the x. So we get this right. Now you can just check that like 5 does not divide a1 because if like 5 did divide a1, then we can just get that suppose v5 of a1 is like y, then v5 of a2 should be greater equal y into 2018. This is because a1 to the 2018 plus a2 is a power of a prime, is a power of 5. And if the power of 5 in a2 becomes less than that in this, then this won't be able to become a power of prime, because like just 5 to the beta, 5 to the alpha, then 5 to the beta comes common, and this becomes a number which is not divisible by 5. So just continuing this way, you can get into a contradiction because this process is cyclic. So we can just cancel a1 now. So we get this. Now, if we know that 1 plus a1 is divisible by 5, we can just do lifting the exponent and that bounding argument which I just said, that we will be able to bound something. So you can just check like that a1 is congruent to minus 1 modulo 5. This is because this is congruent to 0. So you can just check that. That means, so we get that v5 of 1 plus a1 to the 2018 minus 1 is v5 of 1 plus a1 plus v5, that's a 5, of 2018 to the 2018 minus 1. But this is just 0. This is because you can just evaluate this mod 5 and you will not get 0. So that means v5 of this is 0. So that means 5 to the x divides 1 plus a1, and x was the minimum number, the minimum VP. But a1 was also the smallest number. So that means this is true, that a1 greater equal 5 to the x minus 1. So all numbers are greater equal 5 to the x minus 1. This is because a1 was the smallest. So now we can just bound. So because x is belonging to the power of 5 in some number, so v5 of a to the I to the 2018 plus a to the I plus 1 is x for some I. But both of these are greater equal 5 to the x minus 1. So this just can't be true. A contradiction. So we are done. So basically, like in problems concerning lifting the exponent, you basically just compute the exponent of these, and then you do bounding. So now we have like 10 minutes left. So yes, I think I'll do problem 8. This is also a really nice application of both VP and order. So it is basically like about solving some equation of this form. These can be like really hard solving these equations sometimes, and these also come up. So like, what is your first instinct to do when you see some sort of this thing? So it is like to check modulo 2, modulo 5 and modulo 11, because these are only the numbers we see here, right? But these not necessarily work, and in this case like it do work, but we do use it, but it only this does not work. So what we do first, so the basic idea of solving such problems is that you first do some modular arithmetic, and so the first thing is guessing if there is a solution. Here there is a solution, like 16 minus 11 is 5. After that, what you do is like you prove that like x is divisible by 4 to get 16 there, and then uh, what you do is that use modulo 2, 5 and 11 to basically get that x is divisible by some large number and y is divisible by some other large number or something like that. Then what you do is you bound the VPs. But because only 2, 5 and 11 are like really present in this equation, so when you will bound the VP, then P must be among these three numbers. So basically, we'll be just doing this here in this problem. So first just check modulo 5. So 2 to the x is equal to 11 to the y plus 5, which is 1 mod 5. Okay, so 2 to the x is congruent to 1 mod 5. That means that 4 should divide x. Can anybody tell me like why that is? Like why? Like why should that be? So what can be true for this to happen? So basically if 4 is the order, so if 4 is the order of 2 modulo 5, that would directly mean 4 divides x, right? So basically we just check that 4 is indeed the order. You can just manually check that. So we have got 4 divides x. And here comes the 16, which will give us the one solution. So now 16 to the x1, where x1 is like x by 4, minus 5 is 11 to the y. Now, because we know that there already exists a solution, what we usually do in these situations is like write 5 as 16 minus 11. Then the solution will just be the degeneracy case of this equation. By degeneracy, I mean that both left and the right hand sides will be 0. So that there won't be a surprise that this solution exists. So, in general, also, if you are solving problems like this, you basically arrange them in such a manner so that the solutions which you have found are not surprising, like in this way. Then you can do bounding and stuff to show that those are the only solutions. Now, we have x1 minus 1 as the main variable here. So we have done mod 5. Now let's do mod 11. So just do mod 11. What will we get? So we will get that 5 to the x1 minus 1 congruent to 1 modulo 11. That is because 16 to the x1 minus 1 minus 1, 11 divides this, right? That is direct from here. So 11 divides this. That means that 5 to the x1 minus 1 congruent to 1 modulo 11. Then again, why does 5 divide x1 minus 1? So again, we prove that order of 5 of 11 is actually equal to 5. Then we will get that 5 divides x1 minus 1. So just from the same argument. So now we can write x1 minus 1 as 5k. So basically we are just doing that. We are proving that x is a multiple of some large number, or maybe like x is multiple of 4, then x by 4 minus 1 is a multiple of 5, and so on. So we do this so that ultimately we can show that continuing this process we can just go infinitely long, or what we can do is we can bound the VPs, because for VP there is that condition to verify that P divides this minus this. So that we can consider more and more larger primes, we have to show that larger numbers divide x1 minus 1. So now we will do mod 2. So rather than doing like mod 2, like odd or even, what we do is that we compute the v2s in both the sides. And yes, the lifting the exponent lemma was for odd prime, and there is an analog for 2 which says that if uh, which says that if 2 divides a minus b and a and b are odd and n is even, then v2 of a to the n minus b to the n is v2 of a minus b plus v2 of a plus b plus v2 of n minus 1. So this is an exercise. It can be just proved in a similar way. This term here comes next term, which is different. So just computing the v2 both sides, you can directly prove that v2 of y minus 1 is exactly equal to 4. So now, what will we gain from this? So we get 16 into 16 to the 5k minus 1 is equal to 11 into 11 to the 4l minus 1, where l is odd. So now what? So after this comes the hard part, like which is finding a good enough prime which will work for us. So now we proved all this, like this is divisible by 5 and 4 to like enlarge our span of primes which we can consider modulo, so that the left hand side is divisible by many primes now, because 16 to the 5 minus 1 is divisible by the divides the left hand side. Similarly, the right hand side is also divisible by many primes now, and also n is odd. So the right hand side should not be divisible by the prime which like generates from 11 to the 8 minus 1, which is here what we do. So compute 16 to the 5 minus 1. It becomes this. Compute 11 to the 4 minus 1. It is this. So we can consider 61, 41, 31. Now we also know L is odd, and we have to use this because this is crucial, which is what we gained from comparing the V2s. So if somehow we can find a P, a prime, such that uh, P divides 11 to the 4 plus 1, and P also divides 16 to the 5 minus 1. Suppose we find such a prime, then we will be done. So this is because 11 to the 4 plus 1 will not divide the right hand side. The prime P will not divide the right hand side. This is because 11 to the 4 plus 1 is basically co-prime to 11 to the 4l minus 1, unless 2 actually divides it. Okay, so and also yes, so so this time like we are lucky that 41 is such a prime. Like 41 does divide 16 to the 5 minus 1, and 41 also divides 11 to the 4 plus 1. Moreover, notice that order of uh, order of uh, in mod 41 of 11 is actually equal to 8. This is because 11 to the 4 plus 1 divides 41, and no 11 to the 4 minus 1 does not divide this. So that means 11 to the 8 congruent to 1, but 11 to the 4 not congruent to 1. So like we have proved that 2 must divide L, but by checking the V2s, we got that that L should be odd, hence a contradiction. Now the one solution which does emerge is when both these terms become degenerate. Then we cannot apply V2 here because this becomes 0, like L is not equal to 0. Okay, so So now like the time is over. So I have also prepared a handout, and it has several nice problems. So the exercise 12. So I will point out some especially nice ones. So exercise 12, which is the India TSP 2018. It is an easy problem, but it is like to grasp. It uses both orders and VP, so it is good in that. And also IMO 2003-6, which is the problem 10, is also pretty nice. And there is also like then this crux problem, which is problem 5 and problem 4. Do try like at least these 5. These are like really nice. And the problem 4 will use the Fermat's Christmas theorem, which we just proved that m square plus n square has all factors, one more. So, okay, so now I am done. Like it is 8:30. So bye, I guess.